Welcome to this live coming in juicy from Bahia, Brazil. I'm going to drop in pretty deep, pretty raw and real today. Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to drop in raw and real around how to rise in your wild overflow through your full spectrum humanness, which includes alchemizing a lot of shadow and darkness. And what I'm going to be sharing with you is also going to be speaking into some behind the scenes of what's been happening in my world inside of Here We Grow and the expansion that has occurred during the past 6, 7, 8 months, while rising in Wild Overflow has been the anchoring that my nervous system has been going through. And in this live stream, I'm going to be breaking down how you can be rising in your wild overflow through the challenges, through the when life is lifing happens and shows up, and how you can continue to be making yourself open and available and taking the actions that are in alignment with your wild overflow when shit hits the fan. And so I'm also going to be sharing with you some parts of my journey that I haven't talked about as much and create some space to share from vulnerability and get intimate. So Watch Me Rise, which is my upcoming expansion portal. We open tomorrow on Tuesday. You can join all week because this is running all week. Has been a massive initiation for me. And when I look back at where I was a year ago, it speaks volumes as to the power of this work and what can happen in such a relatively short amount of time when you shift your nervous system relationship with money, when you collapse time. Really, that's a huge part of how Watch Me Rise came to be, because it was a year ago, a little over a year ago, that I was going through one of the darkest, heaviest winters of my life. Inner winters and literal seasonal winter, when so much of the things that I had been holding on to, or that I had been envisioning for myself, or that I had dreamed of, felt like they were just not available. It felt like I was moving through a lot of hardness, a lot of sadness. Hello, welcome, welcome. Drop a here if you're here with me live. I want to hear from you. And if you're watching the replay, drop a replay so I know that you're watching the replay. So during that time, when it was this time last year, it was such a dark, heavy, painful period. And when I look back and then I come forward to what is here now, it blows my mind how radically my life and my reality changed because of how I rose from the darkness. And I call myself an alchemy queen because I can alchemize through a lot. And my clients are also alchemy queens because they show up and there's this readiness and there's this desire and there's this willingness to be able to work through what's been holding us back, what's been feeling like there's so much of a resistance to be able to move forward. And that's a huge part of what Watch Me Rise is about being the kind of woman, being the kind of human who loves yourself enough, who trusts yourself enough to be courageous and open yourself up to what is beyond what your mind can even, it seems even feasible. And so for me, that was this worldwide tour where it actually it did feel possible, it did feel feasible. But the things that occurred on the worldwide tour, there's no way I would have seen them coming. There's no way I would have expected them to happen while I am growing and expanding my business. So what I want you to walk away from in this live is being able to have a deeper sense of how you can rise beyond the fears and the limits around and within and beyond money. The secrets to turning money wounds that can show up as scarcity or stress patterns or survival instincts into wealth that is within and beyond money, a higher quality of life, and alchemizing the hard moments, the challenging moments, the times where your body or your life just feels like it's heavy or intense or challenging, how to alchemize those into a greater capacity to receive support, receive nourishment, receive money, to receive life providing and sharing and being generous for you in all of the forms, in all of the ways that it possibly can. So the way that this has worked and the way that I have been expanding and deepening on this work and with my clients has been through my method of Wild Overflow, which is rooted in regenerative somatics. And what makes regenerative somatics and Wild Overflow so unique in the way that I approach it is that, yes, it's nervous system work, yes, it's somatic work, but it's anchored in a connection to your ancestral wisdom and dismantling the ancestral or generational cycles that have been repeating around money that often make it feel like it's too hard to be able to receive in higher amounts without coming at a sacrifice, without coming at a cost that is harmful for your well-being, right? So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect is in dropping into the kind of wealth where higher and higher flows of money and reciprocity and generosity and sharing and circulating and stewarding are not coming from the place of overwhelm or coming from the place of pressure, where it's, yes, those are parts of it, but it's not the undercurrent, right? It's not the drive, but it's actually coming from this place of pleasure and spaciousness and liberation. And as someone who's gone from, pushing myself so hard and past my limits to the point of overexhaustion, and seeing this with my clients who come to me at that place where, yeah, you're having the big months, you're having the huge cash flow, you're expanding and have so much momentum, but it feels like it's exhausting, or it feels like that you're numbing out from the actual, like, the joy and the freedom and the liberation from getting to experience the support that money is providing, or you're just not really tapped into the fullness of life. And in this past 6 months, I have gotten to witness my clients just absolutely rise beyond, like, just blow my mind in the depth and quality of life that we have been able to rise into. From getting to go to these sacred, holy sites and just feeling the divinity in holy temples in India, or the sacredness of the Amazon, and receiving and connecting with my maestro there, and getting to sit and drop into the wisdom of the plant teachers, from getting to go on beautiful moonlight horse rides under the full moon with the gorgeous ocean right beside me, from getting to experience the kind of freedom and liberation to make the choices every day that are actually the most supportive and the most nourishing for my body, and trust and deepen into the trust of the way that life wants to show up for me, right? And this has happened while some really intense challenges have been happening behind the scenes. And rewind, also, this has happened and has been the new norm and the new baseline and the new reality where I'm attracting the dreamiest clients, where I am going to these dreamy, extraordinary places all over the world, where I'm going in and out of airport VIP luxury lounges and getting to work with my team to create like the most turned on aligned offers to serve you and to support you in your work and your wealth and your wild overflow. And also navigating, you know, these pieces. So I'm going to share two that come up for me right now. One of them is hopping through continents with changing time zones with a team member that was just not upholding the agreements that we had set, was not showing up in the way that was expected, and no longer being reliable, no longer being accountable, and then needing to hire someone new who was actually a woman of her word, and who there was a very strong, alignment with. So this was happening at the same time where I'm quite literally going from one continent to another continent and about to go off grid, and needing to let go of a team member that was becoming misaligned, and who I had a perception and a trust and an understanding that was completely not following up to that, and while also hiring and training someone to take on that work and those responsibilities, while holding a launch, while holding myself in languages that I don't understand, in the discomfort that was showing up in going into medicine ceremony. And as a medicine woman, we know that these are massive initiations, and so they bring up a lot of the shadow parts of ourselves that we're needing to look at, that we're needing to face. And that's a huge part of rising, is being able to face the shadows, the things that have kept repeating unconsciously, so that you can actually make the conscious choice with that higher awareness to change the way that you're responding to life, right? And so that hiccup was all happening at the same time. And the reason why I bring this up is because when life happens in a way that we don't expect it to, and when challenges show up, when ruptures show up, when disasters show up, this was also happening, mind you, while Hurricane Helene was going on. And so dear friends of mine were being directly impacted by Hurricane Helene. A conference that I had just invested thousands to be at had just been canceled. So then I was also going through my own personal experience of grief and loss over figuring out, how I was going to recover those funds. There was flights that were canceled, and the airlines weren't giving the refund back. And so all of these things are happening. And meanwhile, I'm expanding my capacity to receive. I'm like, whew, this is intense. This is a lot. This is challenging. How can I receive even more right now? Right? So bringing in that team member, letting myself trust in my own leadership to let her show up for me in having the kind of hotel and Airbnbs that are going to create the space and the openness and the environment to nurture me, to feel really supported, in getting massages and letting energy workers and healers support my body and support my flow of energy, in leaning into my mentorship and my coaches and my community, like really leaning into all of the different ways that I could be supported, which was edgy and uncomfortable and challenging. And one of the things that I see is that a lot of people who are, they're successful, but they might not feel as successful as they actually are. Like you're having, hundreds or thousands of clients that you're supporting, or you are experiencing the most successful launches or programs or containers, and there's still something internally that's not quite right. It feels off, or it feels like it's not really fulfilling, is because your relationship to your work has been dimmed in some way by pushing past what feels with what's most true and what's most authentic and what's most alive for you. And so with this time of navigating the challenges, navigating the unexpected life being life, and holding and supporting and loving and pouring into my clients, I see how just the power of one shift, of one realignment, opens up so much space in the body. And if I would have, let's say, continued to try and push on the way things had been going. So here's some examples. If I would have just kept on holding on to that team member, even though it clearly wasn't working, if I would have not trusted the new team member to give a lot of trust and a lot of responsibility to take on a lot of tasks, if I would have not felt the pain or the grief or the sadness of the loss of that money and not knowing when I was going to be able to receive, if I was going to be able to save, mind you, I didn't, the refund from that event that I didn't go to. If I would have allowed for the discomfort and the challenge of being in a different time zone and a different language and all of my own like ego's ways of protecting myself going into medicine ceremony really get to me. If I would have wanted to cling on to control and hold on to everything that I know and not accept support from all of these different ways that life wanted to support me, that money wanted to support me, not get the massages, not treat myself to full days just playing on the beach and letting myself be in joy, letting myself be in pleasure, letting myself have really yummy, juicy self dates, eating delicious food and listening to incredible music. If I would have not done all of those things, I wouldn't have expanded my capacity to actually be able to enjoy the quality of life that money was providing for me, which was in turn allowing for me to attract and expand the people who were coming into my world that were aligned with me at that vibration, at that resonance. And because I did, because through all of the pain, and this is also not including things that were going on in my personal life, working through some challenges, with family and with friends and with triggers and activations that were hard but necessary and that actually brought us so much closer and so much more intimate because we were having the kinds of necessary conversations and honest dialogue that allowed for us to really feel each other and to see each other and to understand each other and to accept each other in new depths. All of this is what it takes to grow and expand your capacity to be in wild overflow. And when I am operating at that frequency of wild overflow and when I'm resonating at that frequency, I'm attracting the kinds of humans that are ready to go there with me. This is why one of my clients, she'd been in the business world. She's super, super successful, incredibly powerful in her work, is just killing it, but did not feel the wild overflow from the inside out because the internal reality, the internal landscape was still in survival. I use the desert a lot in like Mother Earth as analogies. So you can think of this as yourself. If your internal world is feeling like it's heavy and dry and like it's barren of life force, then it's really hard to actually be able to receive the nourishment and the support that is going to allow for the wild overflow to ripple out in your external reality. And when you're feeling, like it's a lush garden and there's water that's being poured in, there's sunlight, solar energy that's being poured in, there's care, there's nutrients, when you're changing the relationship to the internal landscape, then the relationship with money then replicates it. This is why in just one session, in just 1 month together, we doubled the cash flow, when before it felt like 100K months felt like so stressful. It felt like so much pressure. It felt so overwhelming because at 50K months, that's how it felt. But when we applied my Wild Overflow method to her nervous system, liberated the nervous system, when we alchemized the fears, the stories, the meaning, we rose through those together, working with her individual nervous system, which is what we do inside of Watch Me Rise. What happened is the arriving into, landing into 100K months actually felt easier than it had ever felt before. And that's what happens when you're devoted to rising through the fears that are telling you it's going to go against what you desire. Because the truth is, it is going against what feels normal, what feels familiar, what feels comfortable. I will tell you, it did not feel normal or comfortable for me to be living in the new depth of luxury that has become my life, in terms of all of the free days that I get to choose to have for myself, with myself, because I fucking deserve it and because I want it. On Thursday, I went to this really beautiful festival here. It's like the second biggest festival in Brazil, Bonfim, and just get to spend the day in joy and in pleasure and dancing and being in music and being connected to nature, and to go off into the ocean and just connect with the elements, and to decide that you don't need to push, right? Because one version of myself, and I see this with my clients, and this is probably true for you in some way, where there's a choice that you have to push yourself and to force yourself and to keep going. That is your body stuck in overdrive, right? And how we alchemize and liberate the nervous system out of overdrive and into overflow is actually shifting into go, 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 or work, 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 into receive, receive, receive. And when you're receiving and receiving and receiving, then you're giving and giving and giving from generosity and from pleasure and from turn on, not from abandonment or sacrifice or neglect, which is what the stories of the past have told you it has to be. That's what toxic capitalism says. That's what certain ancestral encoding says it has to be. That in order to land into higher cash flow, that it comes with leaving yourself, abandoning yourself, and overworking yourself, and being in that state of somewhat of overdrive. And so what this means for you is that you liberate your lineage, you liberate yourself, you liberate humanity, you liberate Mother Earth through your own liberation, because for one of us is for all of us. Until we dive into this inside of Watch Me Rise, I'm so excited for this portal. We open tomorrow because now is really, it's such a rich time to be rising and stepping into this work, when there's so much happening in the world right now that is beyond our control, but that we actually do have so much power and agency, and how we are choosing to respond to it, and how we are choosing to rise from it and rise in it on a personal level that is impacting our communities, that's impacting your clients, that's impacting your family, that's impacting the collective at large. Because when you reclaim your power and your pleasure and your liberation in your nervous system to expand your capacity to show up when it matters, when things are hard, when things are challenging, when there are these dark, shadowy parts of life and reality that we're being confronted with, that's the time that it matters the most to allow money to support us. We free ourselves when we free our relationship with money. And so it is our responsibility to rise with and beyond money, to allow ourselves to have a greater capacity to be with money in a way that creates space, that creates pleasure, that creates joy, that creates liberation, that creates the kind of quality of life, the quality of being with ourselves that is going to continue to create the kind of world that is more safe and more free for all of us. So I brought in some sticky moments with you that have happened, some BTS moments. I have loads more, and I'm going to be giving you a lot of, wisdom drops of gold nuggets inside of our broadcast channel as well. So if you're not in the broadcast channel, make sure you go now and join the broadcast channel now, because I'll be sharing some mini trainings. I'll be sharing some wisdom drops with you that I won't be sharing anywhere else. And I will be inviting you into special opportunities that are going to be exclusive to the broadcast channel. Watch Me Rise runs this whole week. And while we're live, you can still join us for $125. Once we aren't live anymore at the end of the week, it's going to the full price. The replays of this training and activation are $333. And what I really feel, it's just so deep in my heart right now, is the necessity for us to be able to include our full spectrum humanness as we continue to arise. Because what I see in the online space a lot of the time is this wanting to spotlight or highlight or only focus on, the positive aspects of reality or of ourselves. And when we own what feels like darkness or shadowy times, like rewinding back to a year ago, it actually shows what we are capable of rising from. So the year ago, when I was just like bawling my eyes out, just going through massive crumbling, breakthrough, breakdown, just totally allowing for the processing of some pain that I hadn't been with, going through a big breakup, going through a complete redirection, a reshifting of my life and of my timeline, and letting the heaviness move through my body. That is what gave me the clarity and the direction and the trust to be the leader, to be the woman, to decide that the next year was going to be the greatest masterpiece of my fucking life. And that's exactly what happened. And so you don't necessarily need to be going through a heavy, hard, really challenging time right now. But I imagine that there are parts of your life right now that feel like that. And if you're like my clients who, you're already created an amazing body of work and you're experiencing, the kinds of dreams that you thought weren't possible for you that are now your reality, but you're ready for something even bigger. You're ready for something even more extraordinary, but you want it to feel differently, right? You don't want it to feel as stressful or as tiring, or you don't want it to feel depleting. That's what the alchemy work is. That's what you're rising from. That's what you're creating, you're liberating your lineage from. And that's the new legacy of what wealth gets to be like for you, because it's how it feels, not how it looks. So it can look one way, but if it's not feeling how it looks, then what's the fucking point? So I am really excited to be opening up the portal for Watch Me Rise, for you to step in, for you to rise with us, and to allow for yourself to be with your body, to be with your nervous system, to get really intimate with your relationship with money, where you're facing the fears, you're rising through the resistance, you're rising through the old stories and patterns and the money wounds that have made bigger, better, wetter, juicier, Wild Overflow a that have made it feel like it is not possible without doing what you have been doing. Because when you step into my work and when you step into my world, we do it a whole different way. That feels better than you could have ever imagined it, because you haven't ever done it before. And that's what makes it revolutionary rich. So I'm really excited for this. I'm so grateful to be sharing this offer, to be sharing this work. And you can join us by DMing me Rise. You can go to the link in my bio if you want to make it super easy for yourself, or you can just DM me or comment on this replay Rise. Or if you're watching this from another platform, the link will be provided for you to be able to join us or watch the replay. And I'm sending you so much love and blessing up the beginning of this week.